Hey neighbors, the handyman here with Initiative Coffee Company, along with three halflings in a trench coat. Well, two halflings in a trench coat, Jake Del Maro. Today, we're talking about DDAL 4-14, The Dark Lord, writer Greg Marks, editors Claire Hoffman, and Travis Woodall. This is a 4-hour module set for Tier 2 play, tuned for 5 8th level characters. It is finally time to seek out Esme and stop her evil schemes. Party will have to use all the allies they have in order to find and put a stop to Esme, as well as escape Barovia for good. Part 1, In Need of Friends. As the party takes stock in their aims to disrupt Esme, it becomes obvious that a powerful spellcaster is necessary to begin the hunt. Specifically, Jenny Greenteeth, the Hag of the Quivering Wood. As if on cue, Jenny immediately shows up but requires a coven to find Esme. While Sybil immediately volunteers, the party will have to find a third member to fill in. Once the coven is built, the players just need to produce several of the many tokens they've collected since the mists brought them here, as a focus for the scrying spell. Jake, start us off. We're talking about old allies here, Season 1 characters. Let's
We
go.
brought this up in the last couple adventures. It's important to draw a connection with your players, the game. It makes it interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that they're kind of doing it for you, it's nice. What I would say is there's Jenny Greenteeth is just that oldie but goodie. You can throw her back into any adventure.
She shows up in a lot of CCCs. She shows up.
She's an easy solution
yeah.
for a common problem or problems that exist. And you know what? It's fine that it is. You know what? I'm not going to complain because Jenny Greenteeth is just a silly character. And, you meet her and, the more you, in Adventures League play, the more out-of-character gaming you do with her, you realize where she has her influences in. Mm-hmm. And it's literally everywhere.
Yeah. It's
not like she's unfamiliar with these things. She's like, yeah, I don't like being here, but it's like I'm definitely not the low man on the totem pole.
Right. She's an interesting character because so many problems like Jenny Greenteeth is thrown at, and it would feel kind of like anticlimactic if there wasn't a cost every time you met Jenny Greenteeth, right? If she was a good aligned character that was just championing the good of whatever, it would be very frustrating because very suddenly none of these stories would be about the players; they'd be about Jenny Greenteeth.
Yeah.
But because she's so evil, and players are just constantly forced to deal with her, the choice to deal with her becomes a character choice, and there's narrative consequence.
Yeah, and every interaction I feel at a table I have is very silly. Whenever the conversation of Jenny Greenteeth shows up, it's just ugh. It's just that the almost taking the wind out of the sails kind of thing. Oh god, I don't have to deal with her because, as you said, it is a narrative thing for your character or something along those lines. What I did notice, and I remembered as you started your statement, was she mentions that there is something strong that is a presence, a presence that is preventing her to do scrying sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But then mentions that Strahd is also a strong spellcaster. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But then she goes on to say that he has allowed her attempts to go through, which makes me believe this whole thing with Esme is so off the radar for Strahd. Mm-hmm. I understand the background of Tatiana is the most important thing of his
sure,
his eyes. That's the apple of his eyes. But she's trying so dang hard, but keeping it so far under the radar, it kind of makes me go you, as the guy that controls the entire demi-plane of Dread, and he doesn't know the goings-ons of one of his lead people, it makes me shrug my shoulders.
Yeah,
Like,
I don't. I think I have a different read on the relationship, right? Like, I don't know that Esme is like the whole like point of the. So the Curse of Strahd, the label, the Curse of Strahd,
sure.
is this the curse that Strahd is suffering,
Yep.
right? And it's this idea that like every time Tatiana is reborn, just before he
It's like
can
hit
get
by a
there,
bus.
yeah, it's like a Final Destination scene every time that she's reborn, right? Um, but there's also a discussion that like, and it comes through a little bit in this module that like she she may not like actually love him because he nearly dominated her, right? Like it's a
Well,
coercion in the first place,
well, no,
which
Tatiana, I thought was dude her obsession. No,
right, no,
no,
no, no. It is
no.
it is an obsession on Esme's part and Tatiana's part, but it's a coerced one, right? Because like she was beholden to his
By the
brother,
power. Oh, the
like
power. The Esme was the one that liked him for his power
yeah,
and everything about him, and Tatiana was just a love interest that he couldn't get to.
right. And so like I don't know that. First of all, I don't know that like. I think this brings into question whether Strahd has complete control over the demi-plane of dread in the first place, being that it's the place he's cursed to be, right? And second, like I don't know that like her first step is Strahd. If I'm honest, like who knows? Like this module does like lay out like if you fail, true love wins, and if you succeed, you've gotten in the way of true love in a strange
Yeah, there's
narrative
some
loop,
weird
in a
way that
strange
they.
Greg Marxian like uh, like, wild approach. But I don't know. I think it's an interesting take. I think it's an interesting kind of
And that's what I'm going to
view.
bring up and later on. There's like a library that's important, but
Hmm.
like I think brings up exactly your point. But it's like it's so interesting that that occurs in this mod. And getting back, I guess, back to the DM component of this,
Right.
I think it's important that you understand the other components and maybe have the Curse of Strahd book if you
Hmm.
have it, just or thumb through it or go
Right.
online and like read an overview of this or some of the intricacies of what's happening
Or make a
because
choice, right? Like
or
if you
make a
don't have
choice, yeah.
access to that content, like make a choice and stick with it.
Yeah, because that is something that's, as you can tell in our conversation, there's a lot to be said
Hmm.
about the content that's not necessarily derived from this mod.
Hmm.
There's a whole 14 other or 13 other mods to do this from that you're getting certain parts, of course, from because this is not detailed in like this. These AL mods are not detailed in the Curse of Strahd book,
Right. And
but the
frankly, the Strahd story doesn't come up very much in these AL
no,
mods.
because it's like, and like as a spoiler, I guess, but it's been years, so I'm not gonna care here. But it's like this is supposed to be in like how they released these mods was almost to be in accordance of with the book.
Hmm.
Like you'd run some of the book, your characters would still be in Strahd, they would go do an adventure,
Yeah.
and they would like kind of build it together. But that
Hmm.
has thus far I haven't seen since I've been playing D&D in the last 6 years. Jeez, it's been 6 years. Um,
6.
yeah, I know, but I haven't seen any opportunities to play both at the same time.
There isn't a lot of overlap, right? Like season 1 is
Completely independent.
geographically very far afield of the dragon
Hundreds
cult.
of miles.
Season 2 is very similar.
Well,
I
oh
guess
yeah, it
less
is.
so, but
Well, I
like
mean, I'm trying to think like, yeah, it's not. Well, it's not at all, really.
right, like Mulemaster is not near. Yeah, so this is and I think the death curse is one thing that really like helps, right? I think they could have done it with, or not the death curse in season 7. I mean like the mists trapping you in Barovia, right? Like
Oh, like keeping
it's
you in time
yeah, it's
story.
like a one-stop shop. Like you don't want to come back here, so let's get all of the adventures out of the way that we can
Yeah,
while we're here.
yeah.
I think like the death curse in season 7 could have, except there's so much liability with being in Chult in season 7 that like
One
you
bad
don't want
adventure
to
could
do any
literally
extra stuff right?
Yeah.
Like, you just want to get it done and leave. So
Yeah.
I think that's right. I think season 4, like, for a lot of reasons, is a very strong narrative and very tied in with, like, other content. But one of
And
those
even
reasons
geographically is like
geographically, yeah.
nearby. Like you got, you can BS your way because there
Mhm.
really isn't as much of a time component in
Right.
the season 4 narrative. It's just like, things will develop as they develop.
Yeah.
But the other ones, season 1, they have a kind of like a timeline. It's
Yeah,
a
there's
very
definitely a
sketchy
timetable
one,
involved.
but there's definitely one. There's a 6-month span of you
Sure.
just traveling, which
I mean, the
could be.
book has a stronger timeline than the Adventures do, though.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, like, if you're
Well, that's
trying
what
to
I'm
tie
saying.
them,
Like,
right, if you're trying to tie them both in, the book is going to rush you beyond the pace of running all the modules.
yeah.
So, the only, like, kind of thing that gets in the way here is, like, the level, like, bands. Like,
But which
there's
could be
not.
solved by like, hey, you get some items.
Yeah.
It's not. I would say the within Barovia, you're not looking at getting a bunch of items. I mean, AL has their own system. I mean, at one point in time, we could buy stuff from
Mhm.
an Evergreen store, which is now gone.
Yeah.
But we still have faction stuff where you can take certain items. So like, in reality, to the fight that happens in this mod, you're gonna get plowed. But let's
Yeah.
talk about that later on.
You're right. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think my only concern with the level gap is, like, the AL mods get you through the same amount of levels that the book does. But the thing people forget about the book is you're not supposed to run all of the content. You're supposed to run it until your party finds the things they need to find.
Yeah.
And if by chance those things show up the first 3 places they go, because the items are like located at the beginning, kind of like the dungeons are populated at the beginning of the book, right? So
Yeah.
you're supposed to roll for where each item is. And if the first 3 places are where the items are, these mods might fill out the levels your characters are going to need to not get walloped by Strahd in a hurry. So
Yeah. And
yeah.
then, like, I guess back to this mod itself. It's cool. Once again, you're pulling back from all the different, mods from before, all the items, all the junk, the tambourines, the whatever the hell you
Mhm.
want to call it. But it's nice that they have previously used season 4 in a nicely wrapped bow is a set of mods that references themselves
Mhm.
and is everything that AL should be and isn't. There you go.
Okay.
That's my hard stance.
All right. I'm not going to disagree with you. I'm not going to vocally agree, but I'm not going to disagree with you. Part 2, In Search of Aid. The module assumes the players will select Aya Glenmere to fill in the final third of the coven. Failing Aya Glenmere, it assumes Ixaxis Terror Song. Immediately upon making their way to Aya, the party encounters an Oni and a teddy bear that transforms into a giant ape. This is one opportunity where Aya can fucking do something. Like,
I don't know if she would.
I don't know if she would, or if she just wait
Considering the
until
previous
the
mod
party
is,
is
like,
in fighting and then leave aggressively.
Yeah.
Like
I got things to do and then just leave. I don't know
This
how I
is-
feel about her anyway. So
this module is the redemption arc of Aya Glenmere, if anything else.
yeah.
I don't know. Like, I think it's frustrating how little the elves do in general, only to rely on them in the final hour. Terror Song is another option. Presumably, the party has freed both of them.
Terror Song to me instantly makes more sense than Aya Glenmere. Because Terror Song has had more interactions in the past 4 mods where she'd be more likely to help than Aya Glenmere. Aya Glenmere has been, like, has gotten maybe 2 pages of info in the entire 14 mods that we've run.
And most of it is her escaping while the party kills the monsters.
Or giving some offhand compliment or backhand compliment. And I'm like, thanks.
Yeah.
I'm really happy you got here, but you know what's really great? Not being in Barovia. And you're like, thanks would have been just fine. Like, that's all you needed to say.
Yeah.
Thanks for not getting eaten by dogs. Like,
Yeah. The other option the module lays out is the spirits that inhabit some of the players in the Amber Temple. Um, that's plausible. I don't know if there's a lot of other female arcane. It specifically has to be a female arcane caster. I don't know if there's a lot of other female arcane casters, if I'm honest. I guess like if you have one as a party member that isn't there that week,
And just kills her off.
maybe it doesn't necessarily kill her. It just makes her unable to.
It ages them by 150 years.
All right, it kills most people. I mean, an elf might live through it, but whatever.
And it says that, but it's like you got 4 levels of exhaustion.
Yeah, it's a
You're
it's a
unable
cost
to do
for
anything.
sure. But if there is an elven spellcaster female that can't make it that week, that is an option, I guess. Your players are gonna have ideas. Just kind of roll with them.
Yeah.
In terms of the fight with the Oni,
It's an Oni.
it's an Oni. It feels like a plot device. If it were me, I'd probably make the teddy bear transform into a giant teddy bear with giant ape stats, because that seems creepier than a giant ape. And a little bit more on brand. Right.
And stuff.
And a little bit more on brand for the rest of the season. But
Yeah.
other than that, it's a resource dump. When
Not necessary resource dump.
Yeah, it's not like your party is going to be overpowered going into the final battle here anyway, but
Yeah. You have a situation where it's like, you've got a dungeon crawl coming up, and then you have a fight for your life.
Mhm.
I don't know. We can talk about that at the end.
Yeah. Part 3, Magic always has a price. After gaining the assistance of a third arcane female mage, the party makes their way through the Quivering Wood to Jenny Greenteeth's place of power, where she performs a ritual that the party must defend against waves of goblins. And they're not like regular goblins, they're like Barovian goblins, apparently, which are spelt different and have different abilities. This is actually a tough wave fight.
Yeah, I don't know why. This is kind of like one of those situations where the Oni giant ape fight is not necessary. You've got a giant ape with 157 hit points, and Oni with 110, almost 300 effective hit points on the field beforehand, and then you had to fight goblins, which have 56 hit points, which are 6 apiece. So you're fighting 2 fights with over 600 total hit points on the field, and then you're moving into a no rest situation where you're immediately teleported in to a dungeon crawl. I like the goblin combat more than the Teddy Oni fight.
Mhm.
I think the Teddy Oni fight doesn't add any real value.
No.
Besides, that her power is growing, but that if they haven't caught that in the last 13 mods, I don't know what will.
Yeah, it's been telegraphed quite a bit, so.
Yeah, it's not, and Jenny Greenteeth had to get involved. I think that's the other part. Jenny Greenteeth had to get involved, and she's like, yeah, things aren't going too hot.
Right. The fact that Jenny Greenteeth feels the need to deal with the players in order to escape Barovia should tell you just how screwed everyone is, rather than just leaving on her own.
Yep.
Yeah. This is a tough wave fight. Like, these goblins are no joke.
No, their ability, when somebody gets grappled, they get, if a spellcaster gets grappled, you are going down. The
Yeah.
feast ability, yeah, that's fun. Just like an auto hit, I think that's what it is.
Yeah,
Sounds
I think.
like something. It sounds like something that Greg Marks would do.
Well.
No, it's a plus
true.
6 to hit.
+6 to hit.
Oh, and the target can't breathe unless succeed on a con save or suffer a level of exhaustion. And disadvantage on all ability checks until the complete long rest, while feasting the goblin may not bite. So, exhaustion.
Yeah. Going into a much tougher fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not great. It's tough. I like it. But once again, I think in the DM perspective here, be aware of what your character's levels are.
Mhm.
Level 8 is not high enough for this adventure. It honestly should be a tier 3 adventure.
I think so too. At least the last encounter is a tier 3 encounter, but
yeah, like there's not enough resources between 5 level 8s to get through this mod.
I would probably offer a short rest here at the end of this ritual, even though it breaks away from the narrative. of the module. I just think
It's a lot.
a long rest is probably too much of a
It
divergence,
is.
but
Maybe like that, or you have to make these guys glass cannons, and
yeah,
maybe they only have 25 hit points
yeah.
because you still have like 4 more encounters ahead of you
In a dungeon crawl situation.
in a dungeon call with
Yeah,
traps.
yeah, yeah. I think that's probably true. Anyway,
Yeah.
Part 4: The Ruins of Bazorkin Keep. The ritual leads the party to Bazorkin Keep, where they have a short dungeon crawl that leads them through undead and assassins, witches, brigands, and other associates of Esme. Finally, the party finds Esme some minions in mid-ritual as she attempts to bond with the vestige of evening glory. A vicious battle ensues, forcing the party to aim to interrupt the ritual. This dungeon crawl should
Isn't
be a
easy.
whole mod. I mean, it should be...
The fact that there's a Strahd animated armor in here
Yeah.
is a problem in and of itself. I mean,
Right.
I like it, but as you said, you can almost like from the beginning of the mod to end of dungeon crawl, that in and of itself is a mod. The fight in and of itself should be a mod.
Yeah.
Like maybe a little bit beforehand, but like you could cut halfway through because a 21 AC, Strahd armor, 112 hit points. You're not hitting it.
There's a lot of tough fights in here. Like
There's damage immunities, got damage resistances.
there's
go after yourself.
there's weird NPCs that seem relevant but have never showed up before.
Yeah, they have the
Like,
random named NPCs.
Nikolaus Salahori, he's never been around before. But the fact that he has a name indicates that everyone should know him, and I don't. So like, that was frustrating. Frankly, punitive fights are frustrating.
Frustrating. To be clear, I think it's not frustrating for the sake of the fight. It's it's placement.
Yeah. None of these elements are terrible in and of themselves. It's just like the confluence of events that leads to...
This could get turned into a 6-hour mod, honestly.
Easily.
And you could take, if you are really moving to it, the first 2 fights, the Oni and the bear, plus the goblin fight, and then add a rest, and then maybe even a long rest. I know it's like that messes with the storyline, but like then moving this next part into its own mod or almost like section after a long rest still would not seem like the players are going to have enough.
Yeah, it's still tough. I guess there's 4 encounters throughout the dungeon, but all of them are very difficult. I guess to varying degrees. But yeah, it's not... There's nothing about this dungeon crawl is like light. Right? Like it's all heavy fighting.
It's almost to the point of setting. It's almost to the point of setting a table up to fail when you start this mod, which I'm not against. I'm not against failure in mods.
Sure.
Like, yeah, it stinks when it happens, but
this
you're
doesn't
gonna enter
seem
the
like...
last fight, and you're gonna feel the power immediately.
Yeah. This doesn't feel like a fair... doesn't feel like a fair fight, I think, is where
This
like
is the
my
grass
frustration
equivalent.
is.
This is the grass equivalent of season 3 into this mod, where you just fight a god, or archdemon, and he's just wailing on you, and you're like, "What the hell is this about?" And you need an NPC to help you out of that fight.
Yeah,
which is dumb.
Yeah, it's frustrating because I don't mind when a table fails. I just want them to be responsible for that failure.
Yeah,
and like, any time I see a module where the expectation is failure, it's frustrating to me, right? Because it's gonna be demoralizing to the party, especially in an AL environment where like folks are generally min-maxing to begin with. There's not necessarily a table cohesion. There's not necessarily like a spirit of like, we can come back from this because we've been playing together for however long and there's still Tuesday nights to consider, right? Like, this feels like an opportunity to kill off your PCs so you can build new PCs for Season 5.
And I'm not attacking the Midwest AL group, but being part of it, I definitely understand I don't say necessarily the reason why this was created. I mean, this was created years ago.
Yeah.
But like, Greg Marks is very familiar with the D&D template of how things work,
Mm-hmm.
and whenever you play in one of his AOs, it is a beautiful storytelling experience.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't chintz on that. It's when the combat comes down to it, he doesn't pull his punches.
Yeah.
It's you get hit and you're like, "Ow!"
But he also makes adjustments on the fly
and there's no
at his
adjustments
tables that are not telegraphed in this module.
And I think I guess we'll keep on going into this, and we can have a longer discussion in the end of this fight. But are we there yet? Yeah, we are.
Just
cool.
about, yeah.
So I mean, like, you have a few situations where apparently you can like charisma check your way out of a combat with a random named NPC.
Right.
But how do you know to do that?
How do you know to do that, especially with an NPC that you have literally not experienced before? You have no idea of like their motivations. Like, it's frustrating because it's like, oh, well, just persuade your way out of this fight with this NPC, who's apparently a general of Esme, who apparently is beholden to Esme. Like, there's no
He's
expectation.
having second thoughts as things have unraveled, and you're like, this guy knew about this way farther in advance than what he's leading on to be. Like, he didn't go, yikes, you probably shouldn't let this woman have this much power.
It was fine when she was murdering the countryside, but now that I'm at risk, maybe it's not okay. Like, I don't know,
maybe
like,
one of the undead, the Morning Lord or whatever, I don't remember which person he's with, or that she's embodying right now. But like, once you saw, you're like, yikes, you probably shouldn't have let this happen. No, that conversation didn't come up. Maybe we should have like a Caesar stabbing time. Like, we didn't have any of that. There was none of that in the conversation. And then you're supposed to, once again, as like decipher, this person's like, yeah, this isn't such a good idea.
Right.
Like, when is that telegraphed? It's never telegraphed. And it is what it is. You have to go and fight your way through the rest of this dungeon. And I guess that's where we get to the final fight.
And then we get to the final fight where your goal is to interrupt her ritual, but she has legendary resistances, right? So,
as a DM, you need to understand her fight really well.
You need to pore over this stat block.
This is not you wait until the last minute and you look at her stat block. This is spend 20 minutes looking at her stat block. Maybe write down what moves you want to do, because that's not what they do not. In the newer mods, they're like, hey, they'll start out with this ability. That's where you go from. Yeah, there is no tactics because her tactics are bonkers. Like,
yeah, I mean, like, she can pass off her concentration onto allies. She can charm your party members, which turn them into allies. Ultimately, she can have. I mean, the encounter starts with 2 goons. And if she charms enough of your party, she can have 6 concentration spells up at a time.
And then her flames, each one can just cast a spell.
Yeah, like,
and they don't require components. They can't be countered.
Yeah.
Like, she can just randomly finger or death someone, and there's no rhyme or reason to it, because I think she can just counterspell it anyway, which would cause another flame to go out, or there's just a lot of. This is where almost sitting down with the party and being like, hey guys, we're in the capstone event. Things are gonna suck.
Yeah.
And like, it's not, I don't know if that's out of line to say to a player or say to a table, but like, when you start saying stuff and it's like, oh, it's someone's turn, you're like, wait. It gets annoying as a player, because it's like, hey guys, there's a lot of function and mechanics going on. If interruptions happen, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But like, making that clear to the party, and like almost doing one of those waves, like, hey, this is how long her stat block is, and like, don't just let them see, but like, this is how long it is, and like, it's just a page and a half, 2 pages of just material. Like, it kind of gives a little bit more of a all right, well, this is gonna suck. But
anytime I look at a stat block and see 6 different legendary actions and 4 layer actions, I get nervous. right?
In an action that's a paragraph long.
Jeez. There's a lot here, and more than likely, unfortunately, your party is not going to be successful. Like, I guess, like, the one benefit is all they have to do is find a way to keep her from concentrating on the spell, for the ritual for one round. So, like, if you can get a stun off, great, but she's got legendary resistance.
She's immune to it.
Oh, is she immune to stun?
She's immune to charms, exhaustion, frightened, grappled, paralyzed, petrified, poisoned, prone, restrained, and unconscious.
Yep.
So the only way that she can do that is if the Evening Glory, is pulled from her body with the amulet, which, good luck.
Mm-hmm.
The amulet in of itself is a cool mechanic, but, like, it takes up somebody's turn.
Yeah.
Like, I'd have to refine how the amulet works. But it's, like, it's not an easy... let's see here. They must use an action to present it forcefully to Esme and loudly demand the Evening Glory to part her body. Then she must make a DC 15 a saving throw to prevent the vestige from being pulled out. The DC increases by 5 by 5 for each attempt made to entrap the vestige, which is cool.
Except her saves are good.
Well, yeah, that. But, like, the nice part about it is, well, not nice. She's a +8, so there's a time the third time is when she will fail. Or will fail via just she can't reach it. She cannot reach it. Which then forces her to use a legendary. Yeah. So this combat now immediately becomes at least 4 turns in duration. Which she can just use her legendary action to continue maintaining concentration, which in and of itself is a problem.
Yeah.
Or layer action. It might be a legendary or a layer. I can't remember.
It is a legendary.
And that only takes one
legendary action.
One of her 3.
Yeah.
Which sucks, because that means you're still getting wailed on.
Yeah.
And
she can also, not only is she immune to all those conditions, she can also use 2 legendary actions to just get rid of any condition she's not immune to. Like, it's just not a tier 2 fight. Like, it's just not, it's a punitive fight. Like, it's a bad encounter.
This is a fight that I would rather have Greg Marks run, and then I get to see him run it, or he should just have, like, a sit down, which he won't do. It's fine. It's fine that he doesn't do it. But it's like this fight, because he runs D&D in a certain way that, as you said, he makes adjustments on the fly. He won't use half of these abilities. He might go off with a bang in the beginning.
Yeah.
But, like, you immediately lose a fighter to one of her charms.
You're in bad shape.
That's what happened in our game. We had our Cavalier get charmed, and then I started getting wailed on as a druid.
Yeah.
Like, it's annoying that this is a capstone followed by the fight you just had with Omu, which he beats you up pretty good too.
Yeah.
You have this encounter, which, as you said, is just ridiculous, and it's almost geared to where you're going to lose.
Yeah.
Is what it is there, but then you're forced to take 250 downtime days to get out of Barovia if you lose.
Assuming you've lived through it.
Yeah.
Like
40, my bad. 40 downtime days.
40 downtime days, yeah. It's a lot, man. I don't love the fight. I think there's too much.
It's a lot for a DM.
It's a lot to manage. It's a lot to, like, fight your way through. I think half of all of her abilities should be manageable, right? Like, if you cut her legendary actions in half, you cut her spells down, like she's got all these abilities. Well, that's true. She's got all these abilities on top of having 7th level spells, right? Like, it's not just, like, wild abilities from, like, this new type of monster. It's also Finger of Death and Disintegrate. I don't think it's a fight that there is any expectation that the party is going to be successful in, which I think is frustrating to players, frankly. like my opinion of it as a DM is like, whatever. But my opinion of it in terms of like how my players are going to react, they're going to hate this fight.
But that's allowable because that's part of D&D. It's just AL can't.
I guess it's a lot. It's punitive fight. It's a punitive adventure after a punitive adventure. I think is like my biggest frustration with it is like you deal with the Omu fight and then you come in here and like you slog through it again.
Like sometimes I like the easy like, hey, we just wiped someone out
Yeah.
fights. Like it's
Jake,
like the whole
like my
beating up.
favorite weeks to run are when we're like, oh, this is a 3 hour mod that took 40 minutes to get through.
Yeah,
like,
then we're just like, let's just go to bed. Yeah, those are the best ones. Where
I'm
it's like,
old
hey,
and
someone
tired
has
most of the time.
We have a solution.
Yeah.
Having a solution. There is no solution to this fight. There's no
Right.
easy workaround, which it's built to be that way. And
Right.
like, I guess the bigger thing is it's just like wrong tier, wrong. Like even in tier 3, this would be a tough fight. I mean, she still has 100 and something hit points. And
If this was the only tier 3 module in season 4, I could see
that'd be
it.
more than enough.
I could see it. Like if this was a situation where like we finally reached tier 3 and now we're going into the capstone fight, I'd be less ambivalent about this because it's like, ooh, like we hit tier 3, now our abilities come in, now we're really tested. But like,
This is 1.5 mods smushed together.
yeah. Which unfortunately I think is like a relatively regular occurrence with a lot of Greg Mark's mods. I think a lot of his CCCs don't do that, but a lot of like the mods he writes for seasons are overwritten. Frankly, there's just too much content there.
It's sad when an overwritten mod comes out because it's like you wanted to do so much into the mod, but then it becomes you're shoving, like, you've had so many 2 hour mods in this stream of adventures that where could this not have happened or just been divvied out elsewhere? Like maybe you visited the maybe you like scouted out the ruins beforehand. Once again, this is just speculative at this point, not necessarily DM purview.
Right.
But it's like this is easily more than a 4 hour mod.
Mm-hmm.
And as a DM, be aware that your time is going to be spent in combat. That should be the expectation.
And I think it's frustrating knowing how many like 8 hour mods and 6 hour mods there are that are not 8 or 6 hour mods.
Yeah.
That like this is a 4 hour mod that is much more than that, right? Like we look at season 8 and 9 where like there's the bonus objectives that are supposed to add an hour onto the module and like it's like go into that room and make an investigation check.
Or it's go into that room and go fight. Literally in season 8 or 9, it's like go fight 2 ice demons. And,
right. Beat them in 10 minutes. That was an hour, right? Like to go from this to that is a very like frustrated conjunction. Like
I don't know. I mean, what is in terms of what you would change with this mod? I think wrapping it up is what would you do to trim it down into a 4 hour mod? How much time do you think should you allocate realistically to each component, knowing what occurs in the mod?
I'd scrap the Oni fight.
Okay.
I would. I guess it's if my party came up with a spellcaster that they didn't have to go find, it would make it a lot easier to scrap the Oni fight, right? Like if they're using one of the ghosts from the Amber Temple, like they don't have to even deal with Eiklandmere.
Yep.
Just go straight into the Jenny Greenteeth situation.
Okay.
Presumably Terror Song is around too. She's in the camp that Sybil made for them, right? So just pick up Terror Song instead. Skip the Oni fight. Drop the encounter with Nicholas Salahori because he's never come up before.
Yep.
Like I don't like throwing in like NPC fights with NPCs that don't exist. And as far as I'm concerned, if I'd never heard this name before, they didn't exist except for this mod. So I'm over it. And then in the final fight, I don't know, like, here's the thing, is, like, the thug and the Barovian witch.
That's a half. When I looked at the Barovian witch, it's a half CR. The only thing I think that's there for is a diversion, because you're like you're at the
Absolutely.
small and then deal with the big, and then you get rocked by the big, and you're like, oh, these guys are
Right.
just here just to
I think
take up an
the
action.
thug is there to put hit points on the board, right? And to put, like, something between the party and Esme. But I might just get rid of both of them and rely on, like, the kiss ability for the
One failed
concentration.
save.
Like,
Yeah.
if she gets a kiss off, guess what? You're concentrating on her spells. You know what I mean?
How would you rule that as if they regain control of themselves? Can they themselves dismiss?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, if they're the ones concentrating on the spell, and I guess, like, unless she's not concentrating on the spell, maybe she could take it back. But yeah, I don't think. I think that's fair. I think, like, if she's using a player for her ability when they are no longer under her sway, they can just decide to end it.
Okay.
I might get rid of the fire elemental encounter too. Just because it seems squeezed in. I don't really know
If it does anything
if it
narratively,
does anything near, like,
it's another resource dump. It's a fire elemental.
it's a resource dump, and it's like, it's knowing having sat at Greg Mark's tables, the only reason it's there is to surprise the players with a fire elemental. Like, it's there
True.
because, like, there's a fire in the hearth. Do you investigate the fire? No. Too bad. It was an elemental the whole time. I think it's like a gotcha moment that isn't needed. And I think maybe
checks
those
out.
adjustments squeeze it down to 4.5 hours. Unless your player's dice are hot, in which case, like, maybe the Esme
4
fight
hours.
isn't that bad. But I think it's a lot to fit in.
Yeah, agreed. 100% agreed.
Anyway, if the party proves successful, love fails to the heartbreak of all. Still, the party escapes the mists and can return to Faerun. Should love prevail and the party fail, Esme is empowered and flies off into the night, presumably to cavort with Strahd. The party will need to find another way home. That other way is a story reward that allows them to spend downtime days to get out of Barovia.
That sucks.
Yeah, that's super bummer for them. There's a lot of story rewards in this mod. Some of them are fine. I mean, like, the problem with this is, like, how many of these characters are actually going to move on to another season to make these story rewards useful.
Or if anything, they're just gonna play in any adventure that has, Barovia involved.
Right.
Or anything Greg Marks related.
Right. Or I guess, like the Demiplane of Dread in general. I guess, like
it's the other books that have come out now.
Yeah, what is it? Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the mists trap you in the demiplanes of Ravenloft and not just Barovia. I don't know.
Yeah. I wouldn't see myself, like, as an AL advocate and lover of just having a bunch of characters. I find myself, I have one or two of these characters. I've got one that came out of the book, one that came out of the season, and, like, I'm like, I'll play them eventually. It's just like, I don't, like, they're interesting characters that have their own quirks, and, like, my bird has now a set of eyes on the back of its head,
Right.
which makes it cool. But it's like, they're such unique characters, and whenever somebody comes to the table with one of these characters, it's like, oh Jesus, like,
it's frustrating. Like, I will say that running for you is frustrating at times because, like, it's tough to not make the table about characters with all that wild crap, right? And fortunately,
I didn't have any wild crap. I was just a bird.
No. Like, when you run, like, Fahrenheit, or, like, the other characters that are, like, half plant and, like, made of half plant and made of starshine or whatever. It's a little bit more balanced in our Monday night game because 3 of you have all that nonsense because it's you, Mario, and Fenway. But in general, it's difficult to make the table not about... If there's only
Well,
one
that's a
person
different conversation we could
with
record
that
on.
nonsense, it's difficult to make the game not about that person and their nonsense. But it is what it is, right? Anyway, that's
That's the end of the season.
that's season 4 in a nutshell. It's
Is there any big takeaways you would say, with this? I know it's still running a little bit longer than our normal
I think that's fine for a capstone. The big takeaways are the season worked, and the season worked because there was a concentrated, through line.
Yep.
Before the modules went out to the writers, right? Like, the reason this season worked is I can clearly see a path from 4-1 to 4-14 that has minimal, circumventing.
Mods.
Yeah. Every module seems relevant. Some a bit less so than others, but none seem frivolous.
Yeah.
And it all leads to something, right?
Yep.
Unlike, frankly, as far as I know, every other... Like I said, I haven't played any of Season 10. And I haven't even looked at the Season 11 stuff. But every other season, there's a lot of stuff that's what does this have to do with, the arc we're playing in? And what does this have to do with the theme that this season is around, right?
Yeah.
The benefit of being trapped in Barovia is the theme is Barovia. So there's no, slotty insinuating themselves into this campaign, right? Season 1 has a lot of, stuff that seems irrelevant. Season 2 also...
I would say Season 1 is guilty of some of that shenanigans.
Mm-hmm.
And they just tie it in at the end, or, the story's loosely about dragons, and it's all right, I guess.
I give Season 1 a bit of a hand wave because it was so early in the 5th Ed life cycle, and I think they just wanted to, make sure they included all of the, marquee monsters.
Yeah.
As, to make... Just in case Season 2 never happened.
Yeah.
But by Season 4, they found their stride. And, we'll talk later on about Season 5 and 6 and 7, 5 and 7.
I mean, even I'll take 5 right now. It's as playing in it, I've felt at times it's okay, I guess that's semi-giant related.
Yeah.
But it was Season 4 was a nicely wrapped present, and then Season 5 was a present wrapped by me, which looks okay, but it's not a professionally done job.
Right.
It's you know what? That's passable. It's it's a stand mixer. We know it's a stand mixer.
Right.
It's
it's shaped it's not even in the box. It's shaped like a stand mixer, and
or
you just put paper over it.
Yeah, it's that's all it is.
Is that a basketball? I'm pretty sure that's a basketball. It's shaped like a basketball.
Is that a golf club? Yeah, it's a golf club. Yeah, we get it.
Right.
I think that's how I feel about Season 5 right now. But Season 4 was just well put together.
Right.
And Mario has said it, and I understand more and more as I've read through the mods and spent more time thinking about it as changing my shirts in between our recording sessions. But as I've thought more and more about it, Season 4 realistically is one of my favorite seasons thus far.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite seasons, even though I don't particularly like Barovia. Right? I'm not particularly interested in Barovia. It's not a thing that's particularly cool to me. But because the narrative is clear,
yeah,
it makes it easier for me to get invested, right?
Yeah.
I think switching from book title support to a general city was the right direction for AL, but it seems like Season 4 was really the last time that they bothered to have a central story throughout. And switching to a geographical location later on is what allows them to be these modules don't have to have anything to do with each other because this is all about location, not about story. And I think that's detrimental.
Yeah, I agree. It's unfortunate that happens because having been an advocate for AL for a long time and the conversations we've had in the past, where at one point in time we've talked about how AL is kind of uh, a gateway for players to get into the game, and then eventually find their way to homebrew.
Yeah.
And I've teetered on that because now I'm part of your homebrew game, and there's times where I'm like, dang, I really just like want to play a mod where I know like, hey, there's a beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah.
And there's other times I'm like, dang, there could have been so much more in these AL mods that just wasn't touched upon.
Yeah.
And it throws me into a loop where it's like these mods can be built into a Barovia game, change the names of some of these people, and you've got a wonderfully slotted in situation for someone that does like a Barovia setting.
And the frustrating thing is like all of the hard books specifically outline like here's how to put it in different campaign settings. We recommend you put this in a homebrew setting.
Yeah. Here's
how you could do that. Like there are instructions.
Yeah.
And the modules just don't lend themselves to that.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's tough because like as AL sometimes kicks along, it's just like it's another mod. Or like, you know, creative freedom is gone for CCCs. For the most part, it's tough, but like you have this gorgeously done season that's just almost, I mean, if you watched all of our videos for this season, like there's not been much where we're just like, no, this is not good. Yeah. Like, you know, some of these fights are a little overtuned.
I'm vastly impressed that a season about Barovia in the Shadow of Strahd has no vampires and no vampire spawn in it. Like,
which is nice.
Yeah, I think it's impressive. I think it shows a good deal of restraint on the part of the writers. That like none of these issues are like a vampire did it. It's all like, you know, I mean, I guess like if you fail in the last mod, she turns into a vampire. But aside from that, like, that's it, you know.
Love prevails.
So there it is, DDAL 4-14, The Dark Lord. Thanks so much for listening to some advice to streamline and run it at your tables. Be a good neighbor, give us a thumbs up, and subscribe. Toll the Dead for notifications. Find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon. And from now, until the next time, roll together. Thanks, folks.